So Captis Intelligence is in a nutshell, what we do is we are looking to fight crime or help solve crime using facial recognition. And behind that, of course, there is artificial intelligence and technology. But the crux of it is fighting crime.
Okay, and so give us an example of, let's say, a shoplifting incident in a convenience store. How does artificial intelligence and images, and proprietary images in particular, how do they help you to fight crime?
So that's actually our sweet spot. We are operational and we are working in the United States for the most part, largely because there's a lot of crime over there and a lot of crime that goes unsolved over there. And when I say crime, it's the entire spectrum of crime, from petty crime to extremely violent crime. So let's take the example of a convenience store or a retail shop, and there are tens of thousands of these all over the United States and indeed all over the world. And the idea of a convenience store is it should be convenient. You walk in, pick up your stuff, pay for it, and walk out. If they start making it more complicated, then it's no longer convenient. One of the problems with the convenience part of it is it's very easy to walk in, pick up the stuff, and walk out without paying for it.
Yes.
So to give you an idea, the retail industry in the United States loses close to $500 to $600 billion a year from shelf theft. And there's very little that law enforcement and the authorities can do to help the retail stores and the convenience stores or any stores in this area.
Because the cops are highly unlikely to come to your convenience store and arrest somebody for stealing a six-pack of beer or something like that.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in the US, the law enforcement authorities and the cops are very busy fighting violent crime. You know, yet another shooting at a school and yet another shooting at a place of worship. That is infinitely more important, society will agree, to a convenience store losing a six-pack to someone who's walked in and helped themselves to that.
Right.
However, when there are millions of these proverbial six-packs that are stolen, it's not going to help the convenience store. They need to help themselves, and that is where we come in.
Right, and so they send you the footage, and what do you do with it?
Right, so we call the footage that they send us is not about every person entering the convenience store. So 100 million people entering a convenience store, a retail store every day does not come to us. The images or the clips that come to us are what we refer to as incidents. So when they have an incident, and an incident could be a six-pack being stolen and unpaid for, or Snickers bar, or indeed someone pulling out a gun and putting it in the cashier's face and helping themselves to the cash, or worse, shooting them or shooting a customer. That's the footage that we would get. And we then look to identify who this person is, not yet a criminal, but certainly a criminal act. And we look to identify who this person is. And once you identify who this person is, that is when the convenience store, for example, can go to law enforcement and say, we've done the work for you, but we are unable to go and arrest this person, obviously, and that's where law enforcement comes in.
Right, and so you're then able to match the footage that the incident footage that the convenience store sends to you against a database. That's really the value,
Correct.
isn't it?
So our let's say, value add is we have a database of criminals that have been culled from the public domain and from open source. It's a database of images of criminals. It's a big database. And yes, it is very US-centric because for the most part, a lot of crime is committed in the US, and information on criminals is available in the public domain and is available to everyone. So
because the public, the criminal records, as I learned from you earlier, are in fact
for the most
accessible.
part, yes, they are publicly accessible. And this is where it started with things like when you are employing someone, you can get a police check to see if they have a criminal record. This is done, obviously, anyone can do that. You can get a police check done on someone to see if they have a criminal record. And if they do, then you can you can tell what the crime is.
Yes. So the images that you access for your database are not in some way in a privately locked up. You don't spy on people and take photographs.
No, we don't. We don't scrape social media. We don't have cameras, at street corners taking images of people coming in and out of stores or their offices. No, that's not for us to do. It is only criminal focused.
Right. And so just to wrap up on that convenience store example, then you would say, okay, we've seen the incident footage or images from the store. We've matched that against images in your database, in the Captis database. How many images are there?
In excess of 50 million.
50 million. And so as a result of that, we've now been able to match this shoplifting incident, and not just in this one convenience store, but presumably in a variety
Right. So
of others.
one would be to match it against our database. So this would be the incident of a criminal act committed in the convenience store, matched against our database. And then what we also do is we take that same image and match it against incidents of the convenience store in, say, a 50-mile radius for the various convenience stores. And the results are pretty surprising. You will find that over the last 5 years, for example, this same individual has ripped off the convenience store 85 times within a 50-mile radius. So they make a living from ripping off that convenience store. But they do that on a Monday. On a Tuesday, they go to another convenience store.
Right.
On a Wednesday, to a third convenience store. And up until now, they were not being apprehended. And which meant they don't care if they're on CCTV. And CCTV is not new. For the last 40 years, 50 years, the convenience stores have been capturing the images of people coming into their stores on CCTV. Today, they can use that in an environment to identify who these criminals are.
Yes. Of course, when we then talk about this from an IP and intellectual property perspective, I guess there are several angles. One is the fact that these images that you collect, somebody must own the rights to them. But perhaps more importantly for our constituents, the innovators and the creators who put their heart into coming up with graphic designs, with music, with architectural drawings, with training curricula, and so on and so forth. It may not match the incident, veracity, or I guess the severity of the incident as somebody being shot in a convenience store. But it really feels awful when you then see that your designs have been used somewhere without your permission.
Sure. So in our specific case, even if someone were to access our database of images, they'll actually get nothing. Because what takes place once we have the image is we run something called a face print on that. So this is just mathematics. It is technology and mathematics. So that image, we are not matching pixel to pixel images. We are mapping a face print, similar to a fingerprint, which is again mathematics, to an image where face prints have been generated from that image. So we are matching face print to face print. And that is actually just numbers, alphanumeric strings and numbers. It's not large files of images. So from that point of view, yes, this face print is very proprietary. And that is where the secret sauce lies in terms of the technology used to create this face print. That then becomes proprietary.
Yes. I suppose the difference, though, between a graphic design, as I keep saying, because it's possibly the most visual way that people demonstrate their creative input, it just needs to be changed in a few ways, and all of a sudden the person who's changed it can claim it as their own, change some colors, some parts of the design, for example.
Yes. Now, certainly, you just, I don't know from a legal perspective, yes, you just change a color and suddenly the design of the hottest coat for this season changes, and you can claim that, no, this is my own design.
But the human eye can tell the difference.
The human eye can tell the difference. In our particular case, because of, when we are working with images and precision, if someone's face changes, so whether it is done purposely or it changes because my hairline has receded or I've put on 20 more kilos.
Yes. The family pack rather than the six pack.
There you go. You're right. That the technology can still recognize that it's the same person. So it would take a huge amount of, let's say, surgery, as it were, to change someone's image. Now, this has links to things like intellectual property in terms of, if I just change the shape of this handbag and make it slightly smaller and change the colors and the clips, has that changed the handbag? And in our particular case, we can say, well, if we change the color of the hair or the receding hairline, has the person changed? And in our case, we can say, no, it hasn't changed. So I don't know how I'm going to bridge that link to a handbag, but we would be still able to identify the core person behind that.
Yes, and I guess that's why we've invited you into the studio,
Right.
because the fact is that as innovators, this idea that sure, copyright protects your design, your curriculum, the slides that you present, right? A patent, if it is a machine or some other unique design in that sense. The problem that we always have as innovators is falling in the crack, that somebody can just take the essence of the idea and call it their own. And so because you come at this from an AI perspective, an artificial intelligence, the facial recognition algorithms and so on, of course, we're kind of hoping that you'll have the magic bullet for us that says, just run the algorithm and we'll soon see whether your graphic design has been implemented anywhere else in the world. Are we close to that?
Yeah, I think, the whole, technology is moving at a pace that is infinitely faster than rules, regulations, and the law. So are we getting there? I would say yes, but are the laws keeping pace with the technology? Perhaps not. I mean, I bring the analogy of music. We've heard of N number of lawsuits, some going back 40 years, that a great song that has generated millions and millions of dollars and has been number one, on the rock anthems for God knows how many years. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, this was actually stolen from 4 kids who had actually played this tune in a bar in front of these rock stars.
Yes, a stairwell to heaven.
Well, exactly. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Where he said, the first 8 bars of this song were actually lifted. Technology can crack that by saying, is it identical from a musical standpoint? But the laws haven't kept up with this. So similarly, one can say that the image has been lifted or been doctored, but how the law and how the regulations apply to this, I think are still, it's certainly not universal,
yes.
But we are still struggling with that.
But you're on the buy side in a sense, right? So you constantly evaluate whatever the technological developments are out there. This idea of a fuzzy search to allow a similar hit to pop up, not just an exact hit, must be something that you're seeing continually develop.
Right. So absolutely. I mean, 40 years ago, this technology was, not even 40, 10 years ago, these facial recognition tools could not even identify a cat in a picture.
Right.
Today it's very, very different. And it's changing literally by AM to PM.
Really?
It is changing so rapidly that reports that you read from a year ago, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that certain ethnic groups, the success rate was very low, or color of skin. That is 2 generations ago. This is changing so rapidly that no one can keep up with it. At last count, we knew of in excess of 2,000 companies that are in the business, the technology business of facial recognition. Now, how many of them are going to survive? And each one has got great technology. How many of them are going to survive is anyone's guess. If they don't have an alternative stream of income or an alternative, they'll probably be out of business if they're not investing very, very heavily in this area of facial recognition technology. So, of course, we have to be at the forefront of that. And if there is better technology, we'll embrace that.
Where do you see things then, not just this afternoon, to refer to AM and PM, but where do you see things then in 2 or 3 years?
Well, it's very clear. This technology and the applications of this technology is here to stay. It's going to become pervasive.
And so do the cameras, right?
Well, absolutely. The cameras now are they're cheap, and they are just exceptional in terms of the quality that you get out of it. I mean, everyone's smartphone today can take an image that is of absolute fantastic quality. And this is being done every day by millions and millions and millions of people. So the quality of the lenses, the quality of the cameras, the quality of the image, the storage of this image, and the transmission of this image, just compared to even 5 years ago, it's a completely new generation. So storage is no longer a constraint. I mean, the storage capacity on my phone today is infinitely more than what NASA was using to put man on the moon.
Yes, or what we were using when we were teenagers.
Well,
let's be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, absolutely. But so it's here to stay. And because our focus at Captis is in the area of fighting crime, we of course keep up to date with what is happening with the law enforcement agencies. And if you see, at least in the West, there is this constant debate in the public domain about defunding the police and restricting what the police can do and smaller budgets. And actually the police forces have shrunk. But crime and reported crime has increased. So if they're going to have less personnel trying to fight or trying to solve more crime and more reported crime, technology has to bridge that gap. So we are going to see this play out in a much more pervasive way within society in the coming years.
Yes.
It has to.
Well, it has to also for the innovators and creatives out there who, I mean, if they have an incident of idea theft, right, where they've pitched an idea and the prospective client declines to pay them for the idea but still uses it, no police force in the world will have time for you. And arguably the courts won't have much time for you either.
Absolutely.
Which is precisely why having the ability to, with an algorithm, with a camera, with some fuzzy search capability, to be able to highlight when a prospective client has taken your idea for a walk.
Yes.
That's going to be in your own hands to solve.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the right person to be able to address this, but I believe the area of NFTs and all of this is beginning to address this, at least at an intellectual level. It is entering the conversation. How our company is going to deal with it, I don't really know. We'll have to discuss this, but I don't really know how we are going to be part of this. But we will have to be part of it.
Okay, so let's take a scenario perhaps. Let's take a scenario where you have a design that you've pitched to somebody. Can you foresee the time when you can yourself run an algorithm, maybe an ongoing internet search, so that if your design or something that approximates your design is out there, whether that's music, graphic design, a training curriculum, an architectural drawing, or even a joke, that algorithm will be able to come back to you and say, you know, we found something that approximates your design, and maybe you should go back to the person you pitched it to, rather.
Yes, in our particular case, it would be more about an image. So if an image, for example, and if the image has got whatever, pixels of X million pixels, and you alter a few of those pixels, has the image changed? And when you have a hash mark, that crunches all these pixels and the mathematics behind it, it becomes very difficult that if you just crop an image, has it become completely different, and is it identifiable? The answer to that, at least if in our view about images, is there are tools and there is progress being made. If an image is slightly altered, we can still claim it as ours, or we can still claim it as not quite ours, but it is the same image as this one. So there is progress being made, and I'm sure in the next week, as it were, they've probably solved a lot of these issues because it's moving that fast.
Okay, so finally, let's look at what happens with a negative hit, a false positive, let's say, because clearly it's not easy being on the client side either. You've got all these people taking part in a creative pitch, for example, or these agencies come in, they pitch to you, and you yourself as the recipient of these ideas, with all good intentions, you might look at all these different ideas and actually see the similarities between them. So in addition to finding the real positives, how do you deal with finding false positives?
Right. So I wish I could say technology were precise in this area. It's not. What this technology does, it gives you one more input and one more tool so that the person taking that decision to say, is this actually the perpetrator? It gives them one more tool to help them make that decision. The decision is not yet taken solely by technology, but it's getting there. With artificial intelligence, with things getting better very rapidly, we are moving to an area of precision. hardly 10 years ago, success was considered 60%. Today, success is 99.29, two nines after that. So 99.99%. But still, there is that 0.001% of a false positive. And if you're going to be falsely implicated based on a false positive, you're going to be very unhappy about that.
Well, exactly, and especially in an innovator's case, they're looking to win over the client, not put them off.
No, not put them off, exactly. So, but like I said, this is one tool that is going to be in your quiver to help you take that decision, to arrive at the precise decision.
So how do you deal with it? Let's say you have an image of somebody who looks like a perpetrator, a shop thief, or somebody who's held up at gunpoint at a convenience store, and then next day you kind of get a hit from an image from some wealthy individual who's morally upstanding, walking into an entertainment venue. Happens to look similar. I mean, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so this would be an area where law enforcement can say, right, we need to talk to both these people to determine which one of them was the criminal in the video where the crime took place, and not the person who entered a casino, as it were, or a movie theater. Not them.
That's not what you're interested in.
That's not what you're interested in. The technology exists to do any of this, in terms of whether we are looking for a criminal or we are looking for a wealthy person entering a casino. The technology is agnostic as to how it's applied. We are not interested in in dealing with a casino that says, can you identify wealthy people coming in? Yes, the technology can do that, but that is not our motive. Our motive is we'll help the casino. If there's a criminal committing a criminal act in the casino, then sure, we want to help them. But not about just identifying someone from a rich list entering the casino.
It's great to talk to you. Thanks again for coming in today.
Thank you, Mark.
Jhaveri, who's the Managing Director of Captis.